every dictatorial regime in the world starts off, whether it's communism, fascism, or any other ism. Okay, they always seem to start out with the principle that everybody's an idiot and I know better. Yep. Right? It's always that. It's arrogance, pure, unmitigated arrogance. And we don't want to talk about it because we're right. You know, and that's the danger zone. When you start walking into that zone anywhere in the world with any ideology, and many ideologies, even Islam has that. Islam has that. Communism has that. Fascism has that. I mean, you know, the Nazis had as many political prisoners as Jewish people. Mm-hmm. I mean, they emptied out the mental institutions. I mean, I was recently reading a book on autism that basically, I mean, they took the autistic children and they basically exterminated them as well. You know, on and on it goes. And you know, Hans Asperger, who the term Asperger syndrome comes from, right? I mean, he was pretty advanced in this, and he had his school, and it was rather unstructured. And, there's a book out, Steve Silverman, The History of Autism, that I was recently reading, and I mean, Silverman basically talks about Hans Asperger and what he was talking about, but because he was German, a lot of his research was neglected. Okay, and then it got translated by a British woman, and then it you know, it started to open people up. And you know, there's a thing, the Enigma machine. There's a guy there who developed the Enigma, which was a code-breaking machine. And in Great Britain during the Second World War, they had all these mathematicians, like the best mathematicians that they could find, and they wanted to break the German code. Yeah, it was on this Enigma machine, right? Yeah, exactly. And so they had all these mathematicians, and they couldn't figure hide nor hair out of anything. They basically were failing again and again. So they found this guy. There's a movie out about him, and I found this. I can't remember it. But apparently this guy was autistic. Yeah. And his coworkers hated him because he had no social skills. Okay. He had very poor social skills. But he figured out how to break the code. And you know what he looked for? He just looked for a simple pattern, which autistics are great at. And what was the pattern? Many of them ended their message with Heil Hitler. Right? So that once he found the Heil Hitler, he could figure out, because the way the thing worked, the machine, once you figured out a few words, you put the right dies in the machine and it would tumble. The tumblers would come into the right place, and now you'd have the whole alphabetic code deciphered. Yeah. So, and some of it I think they might have figured out. I mean, they didn't get into too much detail, but I mean so that kind of tells you. So then what's interesting is that Hans Asperger made a presentation to a bunch of Nazis prior to the murder of all of his patients. And he said to them, these kids would be great code breakers. Oh, isn't that ironic?
Dude, and the Nazis didn't take him up on it, dude. Wow.
The British did. The British did.
The British did, to their credit. Wow, I mean, it makes sense. The people I know with Asperger's, right? They're really good at gambling. They're really good at playing slots or, going to Vegas, because they naturally see patterns that you and I don't see.
Yeah.
And one guy I know who has Asperger's, he never loses. Whether he's on a cruise at a casino or he's in Vegas, he never loses. He always comes off making a little bit of money at the end. Like you and I, let's say we start losing money, we're just like, fuck it, it's not worth it. But he loses money, he doesn't care. It's not like he's emotional, right? He just doesn't care because he knows where the pattern's going, and then he'll make it back. And I admire that about them. It's like, I mean, it's just how they're born. Their brain's different. It's really interesting.
Well, it's kind of like the wire that should go to the kitchen switch is actually upstairs in the upstairs bedroom, but all the wires are there. They're just different, right? And they see things. Sometimes like they report things like we can't see it to the brain, but they report things like they can see numbers. And they can see like colors for numbers or music for. I mean, things are kind of mixed, right? So it gives you a different. I mean, and if it's not that, it's just a totally different perspective, and it's part of the thing that you would expect under Darwinian evolutionary theory.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, you can believe in creationism if you want, like some people, but at the end of the day, there is also evolution that's going on, and nobody can deny that. I mean,
Yeah.
I could breed different dogs, right?
Yeah.
And
You can take antibiotics and then see what happens in your gut. That's evolution going on.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is you can take antibiotics and come down with some serious infections because all of your good
yeah, and then the bad bacteria that didn't get killed, they pass on more descendants, and then suddenly you have all the bad bacteria that don't get killed anymore by antibiotics.
A lot of women go on to antibiotics, for example, and then they wonder why they have all these yeast infections and things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times it's the antibiotics have killed off all of their good bacteria that would have prevented these things. Yep. So I mean, antibiotics have a side effect, and they're trying to minimize it because actually the body we're using too much antibiotics, and people are losing their immunities, and there's all these different diseases that now come out and pop up in the hospitals that they don't know how to treat. Flesh-eating disease and different things.
Yeah. But anyways, what were you saying before?
With regards to libertarianism?
Oh no, because
banking,
something about evolution. Oh, brain, Asperger's brain evolution.
It's an evolutionary change. Mm-hmm. I believe it is. It's been around for a lot longer than they say. I mean, they used to call it schizophrenia. If you want to know more about it, I mean, I enjoyed Silverman's book, Steve Silberman. It's called The History of Autism. It's a big book. I have it around here somewhere. But anyways, Neurodiversity, it's called. And he's from Seattle, Washington. And I reached out to him one time and I read his book, and I just sent him a quick message and said, I really enjoyed your book. Thanks for writing it. It was really an eye opener. It's an eye opener also on the mental health situation and the mental hospitals and what they've done. I mean, some of the horrible stuff, I always knew about MK Ultra. I don't know if you're familiar with MK Ultra.
Testing that kind of stuff on hippies.
Yeah. Well, it's more than that. I mean, they actually went into the mental hospitals and they electroshocked people for weeks on end, gave them all kinds of serious drugs and drug therapies. Mm-hmm. I've got all this stuff in my book as well. I mean, the book goes quite over a lot of stuff. It's a very intense book to read because it's going to give you a lot of information in a short period of time. And it's kind of like, I'm not one. You ever read? I've read a lot in my life, and you ever read some people's books and you kind of feel like saying to the guy, the author, get to the point.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the guy goes on and rambles about everything. Well, the way I write is I get right to the point. Like I'm not gonna patronize my readers and assume that they're dumb. I'm going to assume that you're smart, and I'm going to assume that if you see something you don't know, like MK Ultra, for example, you're going to Google it, Wikipedia it or whatever, and you're going to see what it was.
Yeah.
But so this whole MK Ultra thing was, of course, a CIA program. It was also done in Canada, in Montreal, in the psychiatric hospital of Montreal, and many in the U.S. as well. They were doing these things to people are in there for depression or different issues. And all of a sudden, they don't realize if they're being, covertly put into a government brainwashing experimental program. Damn. Yeah, I mean, it's your worst friggin' horror, right?
Exactly, it's your worst nightmare.
We have a lady here. I was reading a thing in the paper, online, from Montreal, and she said that her mother had gone through this MK Ultra and was never the same. She was basically brain dead. She didn't remember anything anymore because they used to put her on electroshock treatments for 2 weeks on end. And every time she'd recover, they'd put her back in electroshock, keep electroshocking her, just frying her friggin' brain. And then some of them, I mean, there's even stuff Silberman reports in his book about some of the stuff they used to do with children. I mean, they put the kids on LSD in the 1970s, little kids. Put them on LSD for weeks on end. What? You got this kid on a psychedelic drug. I mean, what kind of monsters are you? But you know what, Jerry? None of these guys have ever been convicted, and they never do.
Yeah.
we had a situation here in Canada with what we call residential schools. All the native kids, hundreds of thousands of native kids over the years, were taken from their parents and made white. Was the idea was to Europeanize them or whatever?
Oh, yeah, they did that. Yeah, in America, they did that to the Native Americans too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is horrible, man. These kids. This is what I'm talking about. Not taking care of your kids. like these kids were put into like a pedophile factory. I mean, they were basically molested on an ongoing basis. They had no protection. I mean, the only one who protects you as a kid is your mom and dad, because you're part of them. They love you.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't take kids away from their parents. I mean, you know that. I mean, you expose your kid to all kinds of dangers.
Yeah.
Especially a little child. They can't talk, or they can talk very limitedly. They don't know what's normal, what's right, and what's wrong. And then you put this vulnerable little innocent in the hands of who knows what I know about psychopaths. Who knows? You know, could be a bunch of psychopaths. Certainly, a lot of pedophiles get involved in that kind of thing. I mean, but as a society, I mean, we've got to grow up and realize that there are dangerous people out there, and we need to make sure that these people. But the thing is, they don't get dealt with. These guys walk away. They all walk away. They get a government pension for it. You know, you know, remember the Unabomber?
Yeah.
I just watched a thing on Netflix about this guy. Okay, I think it's called the Unabomber. Okay, this guy apparently, they tell this life story, but he was a genius. He was a mathematician, right? He was at University of Southern California, or Berkeley, or something. I forget where it was. But anyways, this guy was a professor. He had an IQ of 160.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's really smart. I mean, for decades, this guy was making bombs in a little shed. You know, he isolated himself. He was making little bombs like out of, and they called him. The FBI used to call him, I understand, the garbage bomb maker, because he'd make like integrated circuits out of trash, and you know, like he was like so friggin' smart. He could make a bomb with like garbage, right? And that's why they could never track him, because they couldn't find out where he's buying his components or whatever, because he made them all from scratch. He just like put all this detail into it, right? And anyhow, I mean, I don't justify what the guy did, because there was a lot of people he didn't like, maybe from his university days, it seems, and he would like mail them bombs and shit. But then the most shocking part about the whole thing, and let's talk about this Netflix special, right? The guy reports that he had, when he was young and he went to university, he really loved this professor. He liked this one professor who was a professor of psychology. So he started taking his courses because he wanted to understand certain things. And so this professor puts him into a secret CIA program for MK Ultra, where basically, he was friggin' humiliated. He was criticized for his ideas that he told the professor in confidence as a friend, and it was just basically like they tore his personality apart.
Oh my God!
They tore his personality apart, and now this guy's sitting in a jail somewhere, and he's the criminal.
Jeez.
Okay. Like when I saw that, I mean, it's on Netflix, man. You can watch it. It's like when I saw that, it's like, oh, it figures. Here we go again. Here we go again, right? It just can't be a criminal guy. No, it's got to be some government bullshit where they screw this guy over. And because government and legislature are combined together, nobody's going to prosecute these guys. They're all walking free on the streets with government pensions. And they can just remember and have a good old laugh about how they screwed all these people over and all the vicious things they did. You know, it just makes your stomach sick. But this is the way it is. This is the way it is, man. I mean, I don't know. What we have to do is get fundamental government reform. And I do believe that libertarianism works. I think a lot of the people that you talk to, like, you know, arco-libertarians and this, that, and the other libertarian who want to put a label on it. I mean, basically, libertarianism comes under one thing. If you don't like my brand of libertarianism, then draft your own libertarian constitution, right? Yeah. Or my hope is that with this book, that people will look at this book, and even if they don't take all of the ideas, they will look at a lot of the ideas and say, hey, you know what? This is what we got to do. Because what I see is going on, I do see that we're in like early 18th century France. And basically, we have an establishment that's like the court of Louis the XVI, and they're basically sitting back and they're having a party and they're having a good time, and they're screwing over the people, and the working class, the ones who voted for Donald Trump, for example, are basically saying, you know what, we're getting tired of this, and it's getting worse and worse. And one day this thing's going to blow, man.
And when Trump doesn't deliver and whoever else they vote for doesn't deliver, that's when they will really, really do something more.
And what I don't understand is the left. Okay, at one point I was involved in a party here, a left-wing party here in Canada, because I started out that way because I'm working class, and I like to see good things done for the working class.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard people's lives are, and I thought they were going to be like that, and I got involved with them, and I started to see that this is not about working class people. This is about spite. It's about jealousy. It's about hating other people. There's a lot of hatred in the left, a lot of hatred, and I understand the hatred, but they also have to realize that even people on the right are not necessarily their enemy. People on the right, a lot of people on the right just have a different point of view of approaching these problems, how to deal with it.
Oh yeah.
So
do you have a channel, YouTube channel or something, or some way that people can contact you or talk to you more?
Well, I have Harbinger View. I have a Harbinger at Harbinger View. Yeah, and I have a Twitter channel that's the same. I've been using the name Harbinger.
Okay, yeah. Let me find all that. You should send that to me. You should send that to me also, and I can put it in the link to this to this talk when it uploads. But I just I'm getting a little hungry, so
okay.
I think this is a good place to end it. We've talked about a lot of great issues, and we've definitely explored a lot, man. And I like these conversations, and that's why people like watching the conversations I have with people, because we just talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and I think though one of the things is that we're facing change in the next while, and I think everybody can feel it. And it's just like when I went to Asia. I mean, I'm from Canada, and we don't have a lot of people here. When I went to Asia, I could feel the people around me, and I don't know. It's just like the feeling that you get that somebody's watching you from behind. Like you can feel these things. And one thing that I can feel that there's a change coming. I can feel that people are getting angry. They're really getting angry at the establishment. The establishment is basically thumbing their noses at us, and it's not a good situation. And what I hope for, I don't want to have a situation like they had in Egypt, where you throw out the dictators and then you bring in another pile of crap.